All right, let's see. So today, we're going to talk about perfect competition, perfectly competitive market. All right. For the next 2 to 3 classes, we're going to study how market price is determined. Now, this topic is very broad, so we won't be able to cover all possibilities. Some of the cases you would have to study in a more advanced course. So in this course, we will study 2 cases. One, the case where you have a lot of competition. In fact, you can say infinite competition. The other case is there's no competition, but only a single seller. So we study these 2 cases, but obviously, in reality, you have all sorts of possibilities in between. So you might have 2 companies, 3 companies, 10 companies. Those are situations where you don't necessarily have a lot of competition, but you have some competition. And those cases you will need to study in a more advanced course. So far we have assumed sellers to be and buyers to be price taking, so they just take the market price as given. That is essential to the first fundamental of welfare economics. You need sellers and buyers to be price taking to get the result in the first fundamental theorem of welfare economics, which says the market equilibrium is efficient. So, in other words, for the market economy to be a good thing, you need competition. And that's actually driving a lot of policy that regulates, promotes competition. And we talk about, so these policies can, roughly speaking, be called competition law. And we'll talk about competition law maybe in the 3rd class from now. Depends on our progress. Right? So, free market is only good if there is competition. So remember, the definition of good is that no one can gain without hurting someone else. And that itself does not mean the market economy is necessarily equitable. That's why we have the 2nd fundamental theorem of welfare economics. You can achieve a more equitable market equilibrium if you have wealth transfer. So so there's a term we use to describe a situation where it's efficient. We call that Pareto optimal. That's a term that you hear economists mention from time to time. So it just means the situation is efficient. Right. So as I said, for the next few classes, we can talk about cases where there's a lot of competition and cases where there is no competition. So today we're going to talk about the case with a lot of competition, and that's the case of perfectly competitive market. The case where there's no competition, we call that monopoly. So now a situation with a lot of competition. Okay, so when I think about what type of situation give rise to a lot of competition, think about so you have to come up with places where I think you would actually have the elements that I have in mind. And this is what I have. This is Taobao. And of all examples I could have chosen, I picked one that is relatively common. That is selling pencils on Taobao. Now, who buys pencils on Taobao? Apparently, a lot of people do because there are plenty of sellers selling pencils on Taobao. Right, so this is like the first page when you search for 中華牌61651. Okay, so this is the what? I'm not sure what's the English name of 中華牌 pencil. Well, whatever. This is the Chinese brand of pencils. Okay. I think this is actually a pretty competitive market, selling pencils on Taobao. Okay, so if you look at this screen capture from Taobao, what evidence can you pick up that tells you this market is quite competitive? All right, price is more or less the same. 24 cents each, 24 cents for one, 25 cents, 25 cents, 25 cents, 26 cents. Prices are pretty close, right? So prices are similar. Okay, what else? What else can you pick from this screen capture? Okay, so what type of information can you get anyway, besides the price, right? Price is obviously very important because you see this seller, really emphasize that it's the cheapest on net. 前往最低价 0.25元一支 and then it's not the cheapest. Okay, so obviously price is very important. What else? Well, the fact that someone else undercut the cheaper seller tells you there are plenty of sellers around, right? And this is just the first page with 8. This is actually, it's the first page with 8 sellers, but there are like 10 pages more. So, as a second feature, you should notice is that there are plenty of sellers selling the same product, right? And they're selling the same product. There are red, and there are green ones. I've never seen green ones in Hong Kong. I've only seen red ones in Hong Kong. But maybe there are green ones, but they're supposed to be the same ones, right? So same product, many sellers, similar prices. And talking about many sellers, I think the names they use is very interesting, right? Okay, the first one is kind of like usual, but like the second one, like 形形色色1015202. What does that mean? 形形色色10152025. Chinese, I know Chinese like to use numbers, right? You have websites like 168.com, like 368.com, like. But what does 10152025 means? This is like one of those IQ tests, right? You know, the first number is 10, the second number is 15, the third is 20, the fourth is 25. What is the next one? Maybe 30, I think. Okay, so like okay, right? This is the name of the owner, right? Like Wang Dalei, 2012. Okay, and then this one. 金丝莲华永不败 What type of name is that? And something more interesting is that you notice that this 金丝莲华永不败 has two entries, and they are of different price, which is very interesting by itself, right? It's the same seller selling the same product for different price. And it's actually more common than you think. And this would be actually an anecdote of what we're going to talk about today. And we won't have an explanation for that today. But it's something you have to think about, is that even from here you can notice, same sellers, different price, same product. Do you see that a lot? Actually, if you are careful, you do see that quite often. If you go to Mong Kok and try to shop for electronics, in Mong Kok, if you go to the Sai Yan Cai Gai, right? What is that called in English? Sai Yan Cai Street, something like that. Like if you go to that street, it has a lot of electronic stores on that street, and most of them belong to just the major chains like Broadway, Fortress, Solang, and something like that. You have the major chains on there. So you would have the same chain store, like facing each other on the same street, and if you actually take the time and browse inside, you know, I'm the person who really likes shopping electronics, so I actually go window shopping on the electronics store. You would actually notice some products have different prices in this, even though they belong to the same chain. Why? Yeah, that's something you have to think about. You want to. Okay, so many sellers. Similar prices, like similar products, that's what we want. Well, that's what we want from a market with competition. So, What's the impact of having many sellers with similar prices? That means that if I, as a seller, raise my price, the customers can go to the other sellers because the other sellers are selling similar stuff for similar prices. If I raise my price, I'll be more expensive than others. So, if a seller raises price, he should lose a lot of business to competitors. Second, they should be selling similar products, right? So, Apple versus Samsung would not necessarily be a market with a lot of competition, right? In fact, smartphone is a very good example of what would be a lock-in. If you have been using iPhone for many years, you probably won't switch to Android. Why? Well, you can't bring your iPhone app to Android usually, right? So you can see that in that case, you probably don't have a lot of substitution between the two. Many potential sellers and buyers, note the emphasis potential. The fact that you don't have a lot of sellers currently is not the same as saying there's not enough competition, right? Even if there are only a few sellers, maybe it's very easy for new sellers to enter when the chance arrives, right? So the fact that you only see one single convenience store on a street does not mean that there's no competition for the customers for using a convenience store. Rather, it might just be the market is not big enough to accommodate more than one convenience store. If that single convenience store tries to raise its price by a lot, someone would come in and open another convenience store next to it. Right? So competition emphasizes potential sellers, not actual number of sellers. Right? And the perfect competition model, the name perfect really means extreme. So the perfect competition model pushes these characteristics to the extreme. How extreme? So sellers and buyers are price taking, so there's enough competition such that they can't set the prices, they can't set the price as they want. Rather, it's a situation where there are many sellers. As a single seller, you see that everyone else is charging the same price, so you cannot but just follow the market price. They are selling identical products. This is a simplification to make the problem easier to study. In reality, rarely do you get similar products, right? Even if two electronic stores are selling the same camera, you might prefer one over the other because one of them have better service. The staff might be more experienced. For example, in Hong Kong, you can perfectly buy a camera from one of the big chain stores, right? You can buy it from Broadway. But for people who like photography, they usually do not buy it from Broadway. They buy it from specialized stores, where you get you can get advice on photography equipment. So in reality, identical products is not easy to come by. That's why I think Taobao is better. But even on Taobao, you have differentiation. Even if you truly believe they're selling the same products for the same price, well, what would differentiate different sellers on Taobao? Anyone really like Taobao shopping? No, you don't? Like, you don't? Really? My sister really likes Taobao shopping. Like, she likes to buy clothes from Taobao. Like, the reason why she likes to buy clothes from Taobao is it doesn't matter if it doesn't fit. Like, you buy 5, you'll be lucky if you can wear 2. And it's cheap enough that you can throw away the rest, the 3 that doesn't actually fit. And if you buy shoes from Taobao, they are really cheap, like $19 each pair, but they last for only 2 weeks. But that's okay because it's only $19, and every 2 weeks you can buy new shoes. Why not? Right? No one shop on Taobao, right? What would differentiate between different sellers on Taobao?
The comment of the previous.
Right, reputation essentially, right? So on Taobao, a very important feature would be the reputation, right? You have comments. For a lot of people, even for identical products, you buy from a seller that has a good reputation. So that's not identical products, because the sellers that is more reputable probably have better service. Okay. So this is not easy to come by in reality. Infinitely many potential sellers with free entry and exit from the market. Now, once again, this is a simplification, because in reality, obviously you can't have infinite many sellers, right? You have at most you have many sellers, potential sellers, right? But we just basically assume that there are enough sellers such that for our mathematics, we can just assume there are infinite number of them. Free entry and exit, so you can always start your business immediately if you want, and you can quit immediately if you want. Once again, probably not true in reality. Even if you're actually setting up a physical store, it would take time. You need to pay rent. You need to renovate and so on. Even if you're selling on Taobao, you still need to register an account, set up your logistics. So in reality, you probably do not have completely free entry and exit. But once again, we assume that it's close enough that we can assume that entry and exit is not a problem. So we are pushing the characteristics to the extreme. For simplicity, we're going to assume that sellers have identical cost functions. So everyone is the same. This just makes our math easier. There is no particular reason to believe this has to be the case. In fact, the model would still work if this is not the case. It's just the math is more difficult. So it's an approximation to a situation where there are many very small sellers. Taobao is a good example, I think. For many products, Taobao does look like you have many potential sellers. The products are pretty much identical, and everyone has to follow the market price. Stock market is another example that people frequently use. For stock market, it's quite competitive if you're talking about stocks of big companies, like companies where there's enough shares floating around such that at any given moment there are many sellers and many buyers. If you're talking about very small companies, or if you're talking about derivatives, those are not necessarily competitive. Liquidity do dry up on many of these products, and by then you'll realize there might not be any competition. Right, so demand. Why would seller be price taking? Now, how do you get price taking? So we will assume that sellers face a horizontal demand curve. Each seller faces a horizontal demand curve. What does a horizontal demand curve means? It means that if you raise your price, no one buys from you, because if you raise your price, once again, as I mentioned before, imagine this is a downward sloping demand curve, but it's very shallow, so shallow that you can't even see that it's downward sloping. So if you raise your price slightly, you get a quantity demand of 0. But if you lower your price, it's downward sloping, right? You lower your price, quantity demand goes up. But it's so shallow that if you just lower your price by a little, you could get infinite quantity demand, right? So this is approximation for a very shallow demand curve. How shallow? More shallow, just shallower than anything you can think of. So it's a horizontal line. This would give you price taking. So we are kind of assuming the demand curve will take on a shape that gives us what we want. What we want is price taking. How do we get that? We assume that the demand curve is of a particular shape, and that will give us price taking. Because there's no point in raising your price. If you raise the price, no one buys from you. There is also no point in lowering your price, because you can already sell as much as you want at the current price, market price, right? So this is the idea that you are a small seller, the market is very big, you can sell as much as you wish, no need to lower the price. Okay. Short run, This model has short run and long run, and short run has dual meaning. First, there's short run cost function, as we mentioned last class, or the class before, or the class before that. Production, anyway. We mentioned that in production. You have short run cost functions. And second, number of sellers is fixed, no entry or exit. The first is not important, really. I pretty much never write any questions where you actually have to deal with short run and long run cost functions in perfect competition, because it doesn't give you any intuition. It's just something that could happen. So usually I just assume that short run and long run cost functions are the same in questions in this topic. But number of seller is fixed is very important, because that means there's no free entry and exit in the short run. And how would you solve the model in this case? Number of sellers is fixed. So you have that many sellers, each of them have a supply curve. You combine the supply curve to get the market supply curve. You have demand for the product on the market. That just sounds like what we have been doing all along, and that's right. You calculate the market supply curve, and then you calculate the short-run market equilibrium by market demand to market supply. So it's exactly what we have been doing. In other words, you can think of what we have been doing all along as short-run market equilibrium. So just in the short run, just QD equals QS. Right? So this is the example we're going to use. QD equal QS. Right. One tricky thing here is I am giving you the marginal cost curve. You need to find the supply curve on your own. And I think this is the first time we actually doing it mathematically. We have done it graphically, but we have never done it mathematically. So here we go. So here we're going to do it. Help. So you have marginal cost equals to 6 plus 10Q. How do you get the individual supply curve from that? Now here is the part that you have to be careful. The first step is to realize the seller would sell as many units such that price equals marginal cost. That's what we have gone through when we talk about production. So the first step is to realize that, well, every seller wants to sell so much such that price equals to marginal cost, which means price equals to 6 plus 10Q. Next, we want to rearrange this equation such that we have quantity on the left-hand side. So that's just a simple rearranging. You have Q equals to P minus 6 over 10. Right? So this step is important. Every year there will be students who forget to rearrange. So they remember that MC equals 6 plus 10Q, P equals MC, P equals to 6 plus 10Q, and they remember that this is supply. But they forget to rearrange, and then the rest of the problem will be all wrong. So remember to rearrange such that Q is on the left-hand side. Then you can this is short-run supply, right? This is in the short-run individual supply. So this is individual supply. Next is the market supply. How do you find the market supply? There are 5 sellers. Or it's the number of sellers multiplied by individual supply, right? So that's 5 times P minus 6 over 10, which is P minus 6 over 2. So that's the market supply. Then you find the market equilibrium. The market equilibrium is QD equals QS. QD is 126 minus P equals to P minus 6 over 2. 256. So it's 256 minus 2p equals to p minus 6. I think p is going to be 86. Let's see. Right, no, it's not 200. Is it? No, 252. Right. Times 2 is 252. 252 plus 6 is 250. There's a minus sign here. 258. So you have 258 equals to 3p. So 3 equals to calculator. I think it's. Oh, where's my? I think it's 80. I think it's 86. Right, 246. 8. Yeah, 86. Okay. 86. Right, and Q equals to 126 minus 86 equals 40. All right, so there's nothing special here. This is what we have been doing all along, QD equals QS. This is just number of sellers multiplied by individual supply, so nothing special. Just this is the step that most people, that some students would forget. Remember, how much profit loss is each seller making? So, to know that, you first need to know how many units each seller is selling. So, number of units each seller sells, right? So let's get back the lowercase q, right? So each seller is selling however much the total is divided by 5 seller. So that's 40 divided by so 5. So that's 8, right? Each seller is selling 8 units. And now we can calculate profit. So individual profit. Individual profit would be, well, price we know, right? So this equals to price, which we know, minus average cost multiplied by how much they are selling. So maybe I'll just use P since I'm using short form anyway. Okay, so P minus AC, and it's better if I wrote it A, since AC depends on Q, right? So P minus AC, which depends on Q, times Q. So price we know is $86 minus average cost at 5 units would be 20 divided by 5 plus 6 plus 5 times 5 and multiply by 5. So that would be 4 plus 6 is 10. 10 plus 5 times 5 is 25, so that's 35. 86 minus 45 is 51. Wait, did I do the math incorrectly? Huh? 8. Oh. Where did I get the idea of 5? Okay, so now that makes sense. 10, 10, 50, 50, 30, so 36. Wait, no. Right, 10, yeah. 4 plus, oh, this is 8 too. Okay, this is right. I'm sure. Okay, so that's 2. Okay, so, oh, there's an 8 here, so I can cancel them out, right? So, it's 20, so hard. Okay, did anyone already punch the calculator? What is it? It's a nice number, I know it. I know it's going to be a nice number. It's 2.5 plus 6 plus 40. Huh? 2.5 plus 6 plus 40. Okay. Minus 86. Times 8. Yeah, it's 300. See? It's a nice number. Alright, so, okay. So now here's something that might be surprising is that they are earning profit, $300 each. How come they're earning profit when we have already assumed they are price taking and they're competing with each other? Why are they earning profit? Shouldn't competition drive profit down to zero? Well, let's think about this. Right? Let's think about this. So there's profit. Profit is calculated as price minus average cost times quantity. Right. Let's think about how you get what happens in the short run. In the short run, the number of sellers is fixed. Alright? The sellers compete to offer lowest price. They compete to offer lowest price, essentially. But none of them would sell any product at a loss. Okay, so let's say this is the price in the end, right? This is the price. Okay, this is the price. You can pretty much pick any price you want. Let's say this is the one that happens. Okay. So there is no profit on the last unit sold. Okay? There is no profit on the last unit sold. The last unit only breaks even. Competition would drive profit of the last unit to zero. Because if I am earning profit on the last unit, either I can earn more money by producing more, or you can undercut me. Something. Right? So competition ensures that the last unit produced is not profitable, it's just breaking even. But as you see, because the previous units have a lower cost, so these units are actually profitable for everyone, and you get a profit. So competition ensures that the last unit is not profitable, but not that every single unit is not profitable in the short run. Okay? So that's what happened in short run, which is why companies compete. They compete so that the last unit is not profitable. But previous units sold can still be profitable because the cost is lower. Okay? So they earn profit. This is in the short run. Now let's think about what happens in the long run. Okay? So this is from a few years ago. We all know McDonald's is now $23, not $21. But I actually tried. So McDonald's do have updated images online, but Yoshinoya doesn't have updated ones online. So I couldn't find one that is updated for Yoshinoya. So these two were taken at the same time. They happen to be $21, exactly $21 each. So McDonald's is now 23, but I can't find anyone that is like similar today for Yoshinoya. I think the pricing strategy might have changed, but back then, I think this is a very good example. Do they just happen to decide on $21? That sounds a very peculiar number to choose, right? Why 21? Well, in some sense, this is exactly what you expect from a market. You charge 21, I have to charge 21. These two companies are competing for the same customers. Who? Well, namely people who don't want to pay for their meal, right? If you want to, that's like, you know, chicken nuggets contain less than 50% chicken. Chicken nugget is like 50% corn. So it's actually half vegetarian. You can eat half of it, right? It's half vegetarian, right? And for the fish olay, like you have half a slice of cheese anyway. So McDonald's charge 21, Yoshinoya charge 21 because they're trying to attract the same customers. So they're competing on price. Let's think about how this mechanism works. So now, in the long run, new sellers can enter. What happens? What would be the logic used by new sellers? Let's say the current price is right here, P1. Well, remember, we assume everyone is identical, right? We assume that every seller is identical. So everyone is setting their price right here, right now. if I'm a new seller, what would I see? First, I see that existing sellers are profitable. That's very attractive. And then I realize, why not charge a lower price, and then I can take business away from them. Now remember previously, the P1 is the result of competition of the existing sellers. The existing sellers compete such that the price is low enough that the last unit is not profitable. But now I'm a new seller, so there's now more seller. So the new seller is going to charge a lower price. Lower price, it's not as profitable as before, but for the new seller, this is positive profit, which is attractive. But why stop them? If you see that I enter the market and making money, why don't you enter and undercut me and make profit for yourself? So what free entry does is that new seller would realize there is profit to be made by entering the market and undercutting existing sellers. Where would this start? This is unstable, right? Because I undercut you, you undercut me, and then this seems to go on forever. It has to stop sometime. Otherwise, everyone earns nothing. Well, this is where it starts. This is the point where the price equals the minimum of average total cost. Now, this has to stop, because if you go any lower, you'll be making a loss. So no one wants to undercut beyond the minimum cost. This is the point where it will stop. At this point, there's no profit. And you might ask, why would anyone do business when there is no profit? Okay, this is the point where you have to think carefully. Why would anyone do business when there's no profit? And the answer is no one would. The thing is, this is when in economics we're talking about opportunity cost. We're not talking about accounting cost. So what we are saying here is that there is no profit to be made once you consider your opportunity cost. And opportunity cost includes what you could have earned otherwise. For example, let's say my occupation is like I'm teaching, right? If I'm going to open a store, I have to ensure that I need to earn my salary right now. Otherwise, why would I go? So this just means you can't earn more than your alternative career forever. So all these sellers earn nothing more than their alternative career, right? So we're going to stop here today. We're going to deal with the math on Tuesday. There you go.
那就看一下我的作业嘛，我看是不是漏了。
Okay, so long run equilibrium would have two implications. One, you should be using long run cost function, as I mentioned. Usually, I don't test you on that. Usually, you just get one single cost function for both long run and short run. And second, the number of sellers is variable, so free entry and exit. So point 2 is the important one. So, and the objective mathematically is to find the lowest average cost. And how do you find that? The intersection of marginal cost as average total cost. That's how you find it. So you don't actually need calculus. If I give you marginal cost curve and I give you the average total cost curve, you just need to substitute one into the other and find the intersection point. That will give you the point where it's most efficient. Right? So it's this point. So this is the efficient scale. So that's what you find. Intersection between marginal cost and average total cost. Right? Oh, I actually have already put that there. And once you have that, remember the sell price would be given by the average total cost right here. So this diagram is a very ideal scenario, which is the case you would see in exams usually. But there is nothing that says that average total cost must be U-shaped, right? There are industries, as we mentioned, there are industries where fixed cost is the most important cost, like television, chipsets, and so on, car manufacturing. These all have high fixed cost, low marginal cost. On the other hand, there are other industries which have low fixed cost, high margin, high variable cost, like data centers. These these productions would not necessarily have a nice U-shaped cost curve. In that case, you might not find an efficient scale. You might not find a positive efficient scale. For example, let me draw a diagram like this. Okay. This is a case where you have high fixed cost, low variable cost, and that the average total cost just keeps decreasing. As you can see, in this case, it just maybe I should draw it even more obvious, right? It just keeps going down. It just keeps going down, and remember that we mentioned that marginal cost intersects with the minimum of average total cost. So if average total cost is forever going down, marginal cost is going to intersect it in infinity. So marginal cost is not going to intersect it in any number you can find. It's just going to intersect it at infinity. On the other hand, if you have low fixed cost, high variable cost, you would have something like this. It's upward sloping, and maybe it will intersect, but it will intersect at like 0. So these two are also possible cases. Not so much in this course. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's rare that I will ask you something like that. But it certainly is a possibility if you consider. And fortunately, you can pretty much realize that's the case when you try to substitute marginal cost into average total cost. Because in this case, you will find a solution of 0. Right? When you're producing nothing, it's the cheapest. You produce nothing, it's the cheapest. So in this case, we have a solution of 0. In this case, you would not have a solution at all. You simply would not have a solution. So we'll focus on the case where it's actually going to be a nice U-shaped curve. Right? We're going to focus on a nice U-shaped curve first. Right? So when you have a nice U-shaped curve, what happens? Well, sellers compete. They sell at the cheapest possible cost, and the cheapest possible cost is given by the minimum of average total cost at the efficient scale, and that's what the price is going to be. Okay, so that's what the price is going to charge. And the supply curve is also going to look like this horizontal line. This is the supply curve. This is a supply curve. Why? Each seller competes, and they all end up selling at the lowest possible price. The number of sellers is variable because you have free entry Dixon. So everyone produces at the lowest possible. Everyone sells at the lowest possible price. The number of sellers is variable. So when there's more demand, you simply have more sellers, and you're here. If you have less demand, you have fewer sellers. You'll be here. So the supply curve is a horizontal line because the number of sellers adjusts to meet demand. Each seller always sells at the lowest possible price. It's the number of sellers that adjusts to the demand on the market. So the supply curve in the long run competitive market would be equal to the cost at the efficient scale. Right? It's equals to the cost in the efficient scale. And quantity supply is number of sellers times efficient scale, but we don't know what number of seller is. We only know the efficient scale, because the efficient scale we can find from the intersection of marginal cost and average total cost. The number of sellers depends on demand. Okay. You calculate the equilibrium. So from previous diagram, you have the supply curve. Now you add in the demand curve. You add in the demand curve, that tells you how much needs to be produced. That tells you how much needs to be produced. And since you know the efficient scale, so that each individual is producing the long run quantity divided long run market equilibrium quantity divided by the efficient scale. And once again, it's probably easier once you see how the math works. Right? Let's skip the part where it's not U-shaped. Let's skip to the. Okay. Let's skip to the exercise first. So, the first step is to find the efficient scale. Right? So, intersection of marginal cost and average total cost. They have this, so you have the same cost at this point. And as you might notice, this is a quadratic function. Really not. I have formulated this quadratic function such that it looks really, really pretty. Right? So, 6q plus 10q squared equals to 20 plus 6q plus 5q squared. You rearrange terms, you would get 5q squared equals 20, so q equals to, no, q equals to 2. Okay, q equals to 2. So that's the efficient scale, 2, right, 2. Now find the corresponding cost. What would the cost be? The cost would be, you can just substitute it back into marginal cost. Marginal cost at 2 unit equals to 6 plus 10 times 2 equals to 26. Right? So now you have already found the supply curve actually. The supply curve would be, whatever supply curve would be a horizontal line at $26. That's the supply curve. Right? The supply curve would be any amount you want, any quantity the market wants at $26. Every seller sells at the lowest possible price. The number of sellers adjust to meet demand. All right, next. Long run market equilibrium price and quantity. So now let me draw a diagram again. This time I can just skip. So now we know supply, this is supply curve, right? It's $26, regardless of how. Now add in the demand curve. That tells us how much quantity will be transacted in this market. And that would be demand. Okay, what we have, remember, is that PS equals 26 is a supply curve. So the demand curve is QD as a function of P equals to 126 minus P. So how do we know what's the quantity? Easy, just substitute PS into the demand curve, right? So that would be 126 minus 26. So 100 units will be the volume of transaction. And well, the market equilibrium price is 26 already. Right. Next would be finding the number of sellers needed to satisfy the demand, the transaction volume here, right? How many sellers do we need to satisfy this transaction volume? Each seller, in order to reach the lowest price, has to produce 2 and okay, those are, we haven't at the supply shock actually come yet. So just to, in order to make it more interesting, I'm giving you a short run cost function that when deviate from long run looks a bit different. And how it looks, so if the long run marginal cost looks like that, in this particular function I give you, it looks like, I think look like this. Yeah, I think it looks like this, yeah. Right, it looks like this. So what I want to capture here, is that if you need to deviate from your long run output if you need to deviate from your long run output on short notice, your cost would go up faster. What about the part that is going down? Well, I don't want to have another quadratic function, so this part is not really realistic, but that's okay. We just focus on this part. So what I want is the feature that is going to be more expensive if you want to expand production in the short run. Alright, so this is MC short run equals to 6 plus 10Q plus 2Q minus 2. Right? So because previously the long run output is right now is 2. So we're going to use Q, so 2 is the QLR. So this is the new short run function, and that's what we're going to use for the next part when now there's demand shock. Demand goes up to 150 minus P. Find the short run equilibrium and the quantity produced by each firm. I think this is the last year. I'm going to include this short run production function. I think it doesn't actually add much insight at all. So maybe next year's class I'm probably going to delete it. But now right now we still need to use it. So now you're back to short run. Remember, short run you need QD equals QS. So first you have to find QS. So individual supply. How do you find individual supply? Individual supply is given by, you have MC equals to, this time around is 6 plus, what do you have? I think it's 6 plus 10Q plus Q minus 2, right? 2Q minus 2? Like that? Yeah? Okay. So let's first simplify. That's 2 plus 12Q, right? Remember, you have to rearrange to get the individual supply curve. And before you do that, you need price equals MC. So price equals 2 plus 12Q rearrange, give you QS equals to, okay, equals to P minus 2 over 12. So that's the supply curve. That's the supply curve, individual supply. So market supply. Remember now we have 50 sellers instead of 5. So maybe I'll just write up. So that's 50, P minus 12. Is there any particular reason to simplify it? Not really. I mean, you can obviously have something like 25 over 6 P minus 2, but it's not particularly insightful, so it's not very important. Market equilibrium. QD equals QS. 150 minus P equals to 25 over 6 P minus 2. This might be somewhere, this might be the place you might consider using a calculator, right? So that's 900 minus 6P equals 25P minus 50. So it's 31P equals to 850. So P equals to something that doesn't look that nice. Calculator. Right, 27.42. What would the quantity be? So notice the price. I should make sure that I didn't actually miscalculate anything. Let's see. So it's 6 plus 10Q plus 2Q minus 2, so that's, right, minus 2, minus 4, 2 plus 12Q, okay, that's right. So P equals MC, P equals to 2 plus 12Q, QS equals to P minus 2 divided by 12, 50 sellers. 25 minus 6, P2, 900. Huh? Oh, that's why I said it's not. There's something wrong about the solution because I remember the number is not. It should be bigger than that. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, this is correct. This is correct. So 30.64. Yeah. All right. So price has gone up because demand has gone up, and quantity. I have to write it. I'll just work on write it here, right? It's equals to 150 minus 30.64 equals to 100. And 19.36. Okay, so demand goes up, price goes up, and quantity also goes up. And the price goes up because we are back in the short run. The number of sellers is fixed. Next, we're going to calculate the new long run equilibrium. The new long run equilibrium. We're going to calculate the new long run equilibrium. And let's take a look what happens. Okay. Long run equilibrium. Now here's the part where we can actually save some effort. Remember that we have already found the supply curve. Long run supply curve. That never change. That's PS equals 26. So long run equilibrium is the new demand curve at the price determined by the supply curve. That's 1. $24. Okay. Done. The price is because the price is going to be 26. It does ask you quantity produced by each firm. Efficient scale is 2. So each seller produce 124. Number of sellers. Number of sellers equals to 124 divided by 2 equals to 62. So you have more sellers. So in a diagram, that's what's happening is this is the original demand. This is the new demand. You have a short run supply. You have a long run supply. Right? Every time you go from long run, you deviate from long run. Okay, so we were here. Then we move up to here. And then eventually we move back down to the long run supply curve. Right? Okay.